Here's a copy of the notes we took in our spirals over parallel and perpendicular lines. So in order for two lines to be parallel, they have to have the same slope and they have to have different y-intercepts. In class, we figured out that if they have the same slope and the same y-intercept, that actually ends up making the same exact line, which is not parallel. It's a totally different situation. In order to be perpendicular, meaning a perfect 90-degree angle, then they have to have a negative reciprocal slope. That's the fancy math way of saying they have to have opposite signs and they have to be flipped fractions, okay? Now, in this situation, the y-intercept can be anything. So if I'm looking at two equations where I'm saying, okay, trying to determine, are these parallel, are they perpendicular, or are they neither? You notice that the big focus happens to be in the slope here. So I have a positive 2/3 and a negative 3/2. Definitely not the same slope. They are opposite signs, positive and negative, and I do have a flipped fraction, 2/3 on one, 3/2 on the other. That tells me that these two lines are perpendicular, okay? In my next situation, I've got negative 5x plus 3 and positive 5x plus 4. Well, they're not the same because I've got a negative 5 and a positive 5. Again, I'm focusing on the slope here. They do have opposite signs. But as far as this flipped fraction goes, I do have some people who say, well, if you flip a 5, it's still a 5. But that's not really true because this is really 5/1 and 5/1. So while these are opposite signs, you don't have reciprocal fractions happening. So in this situation, this is actually neither. If you think about these two graphs, this one would be pretty steep in a negative direction. This one would be pretty steep in a positive direction. Those two are not going to make a 90-degree angle when they intersect, okay? It's actually going to make kind of a tall, skinny X symbol there. So there are lots of lines in the world that are not parallel and they're not perpendicular. They just cross in an unspectacular way, okay? Now where it gets tricky is, okay, so I know I'm focusing on slopes for this. Well, here the slope is 1/2, but there I don't know the slope. So in order to figure out the slope, I'm going to have to convert it. That y equals mx plus b pops up again and again and over again. So I'm hoping by now we're pretty familiar with this process. I'm going to subtract x. So I'm left with negative 2y equals, I'm going to go ahead and put this in the order I want, which is negative x plus 8. It's a positive 8. And then to finish isolating y, I'm going to divide by negative 2. And then some of you guys are still a little shaky on this. Just put a 1 in front if there's not a number there. So negative 1 divided by negative 2, well, the double negatives would make a positive, and I can't really work out 1 divided by 2, so I'm just going to leave it as 1/2 with an x. At the back, 8 divided by negative 2 is going to give me a negative 4. Well, now I can really focus on, okay, so I have a positive 1/2 slope here. I had a positive 1/2 slope up here. Well, they have the same slope. I've got to make sure they've got a different y-intercept. Make sure they didn't happen to turn into the same exact line overall. Well, this one's crossing at positive 3. That one's crossing at negative 4. So these are, in fact, parallel. Oh, I don't know why I wrote parallel. That doesn't make sense. Parallel. Okay, so there's your answer on that one. Let's see. Pause the video for a minute. See if you can convert these two because neither of them are in slope-intercept form. Convert them for just a minute. Once you're ready, hit play again. You should have ended up with negative 3/5 x plus 2 on this side, and you should have ended up with positive 5/3 x plus 2 on this side. So if I look at those two slopes, I have opposite signs, a negative and a positive. I've got 3/5 here and positive 5/3 here. So these are perpendicular, okay? So just a really quick breakdown. Again, the biggest focus is on the slope. And then if it does have the same slope, you've got to double check to make sure that the y-intercepts don't match. If they're perpendicular, it's totally okay that the y-intercepts match. That's not a problem whatsoever, okay? Good luck.